What's up, y'all? One Piece, One Life here, and I'm not gonna lie, the last few stretches of chapters have been amazing, but this last stretch is just potentially the best backstory that we've just ever been granted ever. And it's not even done yet. We absolutely have to talk about these chapters, guys. So this is gonna be One Piece chapter review 1096 through 1098. But before we get into it, guys, please like the video, subscribe to the page for more One Piece content just like this, share it around with all of your friends who love One Piece. So 1096, it starts off exactly where 1095 ended off. We're on God Valley and we see the celestial scumbags just literally hunting people for sport. Like, it's just sickening. So Saint Figureland Garling is there, and he was said to be the forefront runner to win the games or whatever, and so that's all well and good, and he's with some other people who are said to be of the Holy Knights, right? But then the interesting thing is, two of the Holy Knights that we do see have been shown to have very, very close resemblances to two people that Big Mom used to know in her childhood. So the question becomes, are they in fact those same people from Big Mom's childhood? And if so, how the hell did they escape Big Mom's cannibalistic fit? So we then see Marine HQ, right? We cut to Marine HQ where we actually see Kong. Fleet Admiral Kong is in the story, and this may actually be Kong's first speaking role in the entire story if you don't include chapter 0. So I'm always down for more Kong. I've always been a part of the team that believes that Kong is one of the final bosses of the world government side, because he just has to be strong. I mean, have you seen his arms? But yeah, he's just talking to Garp, and Garp is on some vacation island with girls around him. Garp is definitely a playboy. But yeah, Kong is trying to get Garp to head on over to God Valley and protect the Celestial Dragons. Garp is talking about see, I told you this would happen, and I told you not to call me because I'm not protecting those rats. But then Kong just mentions, oh, okay, that's all cool, except Roger's there. Immediately, it's like a switch. Immediately, Garp is like, Roger, you should have led with that. Say less, I'm on my way. So we see some quick shots of some pirates at Hachinosu talking about how, the pirates have gone, we gotta catch up to them. And when they said that, we all know what's coming, y'all. So then we cut back to God Valley, right? But we're with the slave groups. Some of the slaves kind of banded together and they're trying to discuss some plans, some strategy meetings or whatever. Leading that is Ginny, Kuma, and Ivankov. So some of the people are trying to tell each other
maybe we can if we just hold out for 3 weeks, because they said after 3 weeks they'll if we can survive, they'll let us free and we'll get our freedom and all that stuff.
Ivankov is scrap all of that, take all of that out of your minds, because they do not care about you. They are doing that so that you run away because it makes it more fun for them. Basically, if we don't do something for ourselves to get out of the situation, we gonna die. Cut to Ginny, and we learn that so randomly, she's just the entire reason that God Valley is happening, because apparently she's just randomly a technological genius, and she's the one who actually leaked out all of this information of all the prizes and the event and everything like that to the outer world, which allowed pirates to pick up on the broadcast and then converge on God Valley. So the God Valley incident does not happen without Ginny. So then we learned that some of the prizes of the Celestial Scumbags SIG game are in fact devil fruits, and the two that, as far as Ginny knows and as we know, are of particular note are that the Paw fruit is there and the Azure Dragon fruit is there, which are the fruits that are obviously going to end up becoming Kuma's and Kaido's respectively. First off, that begs the question, where are they getting these devil fruits from? Does it go in support of the theory that the world government just has a stronghold of powerful devil fruits, or just devil fruits in general, but either a stronghold of them or access to them through some means, maybe access to where they grow? Does it support the theory that they grow on a tree or on a special devil fruit tree? But also, we only know of the paw fruit and the dragon fruit because those are the ones we're focusing on. but did they have other fruits there? If so, which ones? And are there any other like really significant, powerful characters who got their fruits from the God Valley incident? Anyways, Ginny's like, okay, listen, we know the paw fruit and we know the dragon fruit. If anybody can eat any of those fruits, we can get freed, because if somebody eats the paw fruit, we can teleport away. If somebody eats the dragon fruit, we can fly away. So no matter what, once you get our hands on these, we need to eat it as fast as possible. So then Ginny's like, okay, but for this to work, we need a decoy, right? We need a diversion. And this is when Kuma steps up, and Kuma's like, guys, don't worry, I got this, okay? Like, I'm bigger than everyone else, like, because I'm a buccaneer, I'm like more bulky, I can tank things better, so let me like have the target, let me fend them off while you guys do it. And I'm just gonna say it, this is just like the Kuma taking this into his own hands and like trying to protect other people. This is just the first of many instances that is gonna like become the character who I from now on will only be referring to as Anime Jesus. Then we get possibly the most hype spread of the year. And that's saying something, considering that this is the same year where Garp uses Galaxy Impact and Shanks uses Divine Departure. So we see a speech bubble of Rocks saying, "Follow me, crew," or like "Follow me, men," whatever, right? So we don't see Rocks himself in the chapter, because obviously Oda's probably gonna hold off on like showing Rocks until like an actual proper God Valley flashback. But the way that the anime chooses to like do his voice is actually gonna be very interesting to see. But beyond that, we see the Rocks pirates in their like full view entirety. So we see Whitebeard and Shiki acting almost like the Zoro and Sanji of the crew, with Whitebeard being like, "Rocks, you fool, like where are you going? Why are you just like going off on your own? You're like forgetting about the plan, you're forgetting about the mission, the goal, like what are you doing?" And meanwhile, Shiki is just like, "Nah, forget it, I'll just like blow past all of you anyways." You know, like it's so amazing to see. Also amazing to see Shiki like finally properly canon and not just in film or chapter 0. And then you see on Whitebeard's shoulder you see Stussy, and Stussy is like, "Oh, come on, Newgate, like not you two, right?" So it at least tells us that Miss Buckin in like the current timeline, or like the current time, she was not lying about like knowing / being close to Whitebeard. She's literally riding on the dude's shoulder, right? So personally, whether they're lovers or not, and whether Weevil's their actual son or like their clone son, I don't know, but at least she wasn't capping about that. Then we see something else that's very interesting. We see another woman who's arguing back and forth with Stussy, and this woman is like, "Oh, Stussy, like right?" Like just bare insults. And Stussy is like, "Oh, shut up, Gloriosa. Granny Neon was part of the most dangerous crew in the world? Her? Like, I mean, from Amazon Lily, everyone thought that it would be Shaki who would be on the Rocks Pirates, because that's what makes sense, because Shaki, like her timeline like matches up to be on the Rocks Pirates, because Shaki said that Rayleigh used to chase her around when they were like pirates in their prime. So obviously people were like, okay, that's obviously the Roger Pirates and the Rocks Pirates. Shaki's probably from the Rocks. So how old is Granny Neon? So we see Big Mom there with Napoleon and Prometheus. Interesting enough, we do not see Zeus, which makes me think that Zeus is like probably like the newest addition besides Hera, obviously. Zeus was probably like the newest addition to like her homies, and it was probably like just made later on. Then also interesting to know is that we don't see Big Mom's kids. We know that a lot of her kids up to probably Mont d'Or were born, or at least have been born by that time. But then even then, the oldest of them, which was Parasparrow, he would have only been like 12. So the Rocks Pirates probably just like dropped them off somewhere. And then we see Captain John in the flesh. Get it? Because it's in the flesh, because when we actually meet Captain John in the story, he's a zombie on Thriller Bark, so doesn't have flesh. Okay. And we also see Kaido there, and when Kaido said, "Oh yeah, like I was the apprentice on the Rocks crew," or whatever, he was not joking, because they treat him just like an apprentice. Then we even see people who may have been Silver Axe and Wang Ji like in the spread as well, because we see somebody who looks almost identical to one of the general zombies from Thriller Bark, which is, by the way, the same time or around the same time that we met Captain John as a general zombie. But yeah, basically like seeing that big crew together, and then the whole time they're just all talking about how, yeah, this is the final fight. It's like finders keepers, it's every man for themselves. They're really acting like true pirates in the like true sense of the word, not like the kind of family that Luffy and the Straw Hats are, but more the pirates that they all have their own agendas, but they come together in order to like help each other kind of complete their own agendas, but not necessarily like out of like loyalty or friendship. And it's like basically more in line with like what Blackbeard is doing right now with his crew, which obviously makes sense because Blackbeard and Rocks have some sort of connection, clearly. Then we get served to another feast, because coming in from the other side, we see the Roger pirates. So we see Roger, Rayleigh, and Gabon moving in together, and you know, seeing like a younger version of Roger, a younger version of Rayleigh, and Roger with the straw hat especially, like it's just always nice to see. But then interestingly, Roger says, oh yeah, it's been about a year since that something happened. And assumingly that has to do with Rocks, because Gabon is like, oh, there's not going to be any captain's dibs this time, which implies that there was some sort of captain's dibs last time. So was there an event like about a year ago where Roger and Rocks fought each other and Roger lost? So meanwhile, Garp arrives, and Garp is like, I don't care about none of the rest of them. Just point me to where Roger is. So then we see Kuma and Ivankov get their hands on the paw and dragon fruits respectively. But before Ivankov can eat the dragon fruit, Big Mom like grabs him, slams him into like the ground, and steals the dragon fruit from him. So that's obviously how Big Mom ends up getting the dragon fruit to eventually go on and give it to Kaido. But before she could take the paw fruit, Kuma eats it and is like, all right, I ate it, I'm gonna try and escape. But then randomly out of nowhere, freaking Jay Garcia Saturn comes out of nowhere and uses that weird force thing that he has to just like push Kuma out of the way and like pin him down. So then Kuma has a speech that honestly, I think it may be part of the discussion now when people are talking about the best speeches in One Piece, even though it was like kind of shorter, but it is still a speech. And it was Kuma essentially saying, yo, listen, I do not understand how one person could be born lesser than somebody else, because we're just all human. And I felt personally like as Kuma was preaching, my ancestors were rejoicing because they're like, yes, speak on it. But then of course, Oda does exactly what we expected him to, and he just has to cut away from God Valley at this crucial point. Now, I didn't expect us to get much more from the God Valley flashback, because everyone knows that it's gonna get its own like dedicated section in the story. But damn it, Oda, stop doing this to us. So anyways, cut to the Sorbet Kingdom in the South Blue like way later, and we see Ginny, Kuma, and Ivankov all managed to escape. And on top of that, we hear that Kuma actually ended up saving like over 500 lives of slaves and is now being like heralded as the Hands of Liberation. So to me, that was just like really amazing how he's literally becoming the man that his father Clap had like always talked about, right? Like he's at least inherited the will of Nika of being this like joyous figure who's like going around liberating slaves and like leading them to just like more happy life. So then Ivankov leaves. Ivankov's like, all right, now I have my freedom, I'm gonna like go and explore, right? So Ivankov leaves while Ginny and Kuma decide to stay together and live together in the Sorbet Kingdom. So we just see like a bunch of different snapshots of the two of them like kind of growing up together, you know, like living together, working, gaining honest livings and stuff like that. And then throughout this whole time, like we just see like, and it's even shown at the end of the chapter, they're crying like tears of joy just because they're so happy to like be free, so happy to like have their own lives, so happy to be able to just like be away from the oppression of the world government. And then Ginny has this cute pet name for Kuma, which is Kumachi, and that's where the chapter title comes from. Now we cut to 8 years later, and we see that Kuma is literally called Pastor Kuma, and he's literally going around using his powers, to heal the sick and the injured. Like, he is literally anime Jesus. He's doing everything that Jesus literally, like, he's a pastor. He's going around, like, old people, the elderly, the sick, the, like, people who are injured, everyone. They're coming to him being like, Kuma, I have all these problems. Kuma said, oh yeah? Pa, you no longer have these problems. He is literally out here saving lives and just bringing happiness to people. So then we see Jinny's glow up of 8 years later. And I mean, Oda's women's proportions aren't ever going to change, so I've stopped like commentating about it. But one thing that is interesting is obviously like we see a lot of Bonnie's design, or like Oda clearly pulled a lot from Bonnie's design for Jinny's adult design, which makes sense obviously because Jinny, as we're going to find out, is Bonnie's mom. However, the circumstances around Bonnie's birth are not what we expected, but we'll get to it. So then we learn about King Bakori, who is the king of the Sorbet Kingdom, and apparently like what he's trying to do is he thinks that like all the old people in the country are dead weight because they can't work anymore, and if they can't work, then they can't contribute to helping the country pay the heavenly tribute to the celestial scumbags. So they're like, well, if you can't work, then you're useless to me and you're getting thrown in jail. So basically another despot king. So they all start complaining to Kuma, like, can you believe that he's doing this, da 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 da. And Kuma's like, I hear you, my people, I hear you. Say less. Come to me on any Sunday. Come to me on Sundays and I will heal you. He is a man of the Lord. He only works on Sundays. Yes, Pastor Kuma, preach. And then we see that when Kuma takes pain out of people, the pain doesn't just dissipate. Because honestly, a power like that would be broken if he did have that. The pain doesn't just dissipate. Oh no. He literally has to like do nothing happened, like what Zoro did. He does nothing happen. That's a Sunday for him. That's a weekly occurrence because he's taking everybody's pain onto himself. He is literally bearing all of their sins. It's not really sins, but you know what I'm saying. He is literally like a Christ figure. He's taking away their pain so that they can and taking on their pain so that they can live in peace. And Jinny realizes this. Jinny realizes how much it's actually brutalizing him, which is why Jinny's like, no, you can only come on Sundays because he can only take this once a week. Trying to do any more is gonna put him through pure agony. But obviously she doesn't tell them that because Kuma doesn't want the people to know that he's doing that for them, because they're gonna want him to stop. Nah, and this is why I'm only calling him Anime Jesus from now on, because he's literally out here sacrificing his own life for the betterment of others. So then we have 25 years ago, right? 25 years ago from the current story. And 25 years ago, Jinny is like, all right, Kuma, listen, let's get married, okay? We both know that we both love each other. We both know that we're gonna end up together anyways, so let's just make it official. Anime Jesus is like, listen, I'd love to, because you are lovely, but I don't want to burden you and whoever our child is, because our child is gonna have my Buccaneer blood, and knowing how I was raised, I'm not trying to subject our child to that. But of course Jinny is like, fool, I don't care about that, shut up and marry me. But then during that conversation, we actually get the first few inklings of how Kuma got to know about Dragon and started idolizing Dragon, and what the freedom fighters are doing, where Kuma's even one day I want to go out to sea the same way that Dragon is doing and start saving lives too. So 3 years later, we see that Anime Jesus is going against the king's army. He's trying to defy the king's army, because remember, Bakori's been throwing elderly in jail for time. So now Kuma's like, I know, this is enough. Let my people go. But unfortunately, even though they fought valiantly, Kuma, Jinny, and a few of the other people that they were close to and whatever, they all got thrown in jail as well. However, they end up being saved by none other than Ivankov and then Dragon himself, who they came to the Sorbet Kingdom in order to recruit Kuma because of Ivankov's recommendation. So then we see it, a big spread of the day that the Revolutionary Army was officially born, with the leader Dragon and his two wings in Kuma and Ivankov being the three central pillars to support the army. And we also see that Jinny obviously joined up too, and yeah, the Revolutionary Army was born. So then the main members of the Revolutionary Army get to talking, right? This is a bit later on, and Dragon is just like, man, we do not have funds. We need funds in order to like fund our operations, in order to buy our weapons and all that. And this is really like clever. It just connects back to the current day where Vegapunk is telling Dragon, like, Dragon, you know the reason I didn't join up with y'all is because you don't have the money to help fund my science projects. Okay, but then we get something really interesting, like a real, like actually interesting piece of Dragon lore. So what happens is Dragon is like, okay, what I want is for everybody to like take up weapons training so that like we're all ready when we go into the field. Kuma's like, Dragon, how do you know weapons training? Like, what's your background? What's your story, right? Dragon casually says, oh yeah, I used to be in the Navy. So wait. We are finally get confirmation, like for a fact, that Dragon was actually a Marine before a revolutionary, because like the idea had been floating around obviously, but now this is like concrete evidence. And Dragon even says like, that was like one of my first methods to try and like find justice, but I couldn't find justice there because obviously he's my assumption is that he saw something corrupt in the Marines, which we do know it's corrupt. But that begs the question, what is his rank? And before people like started being like Admiral, I'm not gonna hold you, I do not think Dragon was an admiral. I just don't think the time, well, I guess I have to go back and check how old Dragon is, but I don't think the time would be enough for him to be promoted to the admiral rank. You know what I'm saying? So then we see that Anime Jesus used to just intermittently go back home and just check up on his people, like, yo, how y'all doing? You know, like, I brought some things for you. I just check up on the homies. So cut to 14 years ago from the current story, right? And we have Jinny, who is now the Revolutionary Army's Eastern Forces commander. To me, that was interesting because we know that the current Eastern Forces commander is Bello Betty. So to me, it'd just be like interesting if we see like Bello Betty being Jinny's like lieutenant or something, and she's, you know, talking to her like platoon or whatever, talking about how, oh yep, like tomorrow we're gonna meet up with Kumachi's squadron, like I haven't seen him in so long, it's gonna be so great, everything yada yada yada. And everything's going great until it wasn't. So last scene of that chapter, 1097, people giving a call to Dragon saying, listen, Jinny has been captured because the enemy caught us unaware. So 1098, we cut to some people talking about the Tumi uprising, which I assume like the Tumi kingdom is its own thing, but there's the Tumi uprising happening and they're requesting the Revolutionary Army's backup. But Ivankov's on the phone talking about, yeah, we can't back y'all up right now because we're too busy dealing with the stuff going on at the Goa kingdom. So that kind of like tells us right there that all of this, like the Tumi uprising and Jinny's capture and all that, that's all happening around the same time as the Gray Terminal incident where, you know, like on Luffy's home island where they were burning people and stuff, and then where Sabo ended up like losing his memory and then being saved by Dragon. All that was happening around that time. So Kuma says, listen, Eva, I'll go deal with the Tumi uprising, okay? I'll get there, like with my powers just like that. And Eva's like, okay, even though you will go, like, are you gonna be okay, dude? Because you've been rampaging ever since that day, with that day obviously being the day that Jinny was captured. So then we learn the ugly, ugly truth about what happened to Jinny. Jinny caught the eye of a celestial dragon, like a celestial scumbag. The scumbag Sar said, I want her, so we gonna kidnap her. And that's exactly what happened. They kidnapped her, took her back to Mary Joa, where they all live. And regarding Bonnie's birth, I don't even know like YouTube's like whole parameters around like this subject matter, but suffice to say, Jinny had a child against her will. Also, quick side note, after Kuma helps quell the Tumi uprising and all that, or like I guess help it succeed, he talks to Dragon about how, oh yeah, like I'm too exhausted to get back by ship, by my powers, so I have to get back by ship. So that kind of assumes that his powers either have like a frequency limit in terms of the amount of times or how frequent he can use his powers, or an energy type thing where he needs to like rest and regain like an unquantifiable amount of energy before he can use his powers again, but there is a limit. So then we cut to 2 years later, and mind you, that's 2 years since Jinny's been captured and nobody did anything about it. So we see Jinny and baby Bonnie sailing away from Mary Joa on like just some other vessel, right? And Ginny finally, after 2 years, is able to get into contact with the Revolutionary Army. So during the call, she's like on the phone with Kuma, Ivankov, Dragons there, everybody, and she's like, oh yeah, so the way I escaped is because it's not so much that I escaped as opposed to I was just thrown out because I ended up getting sick. So the celestial scumbag ain't want me no more. But isn't that a stroke of luck? And that just goes to show like how absolutely deplorable, horrible human beings the celestial dragons are, that people would literally rather be sick and get cast out than like be anywhere around you. Like it's just tragic. But then she's on the phone and she tells them all, like, unfortunately, this call, it seems like this is going to have to be our goodbye. And everyone's shocked, like, what do you mean? Kuma's like, what's going on? And Ginny reveals, like, yeah, I'm not going to lie to you. I do not think I'm going to live before seeing you again, Kuma. So, of course, Ginny's dying, but she obviously says on the call, like, Kuma, I always have loved you and I always will. And Kuma's like, I know exactly where she ended up going. Pops himself over to the Sorbet Kingdom, the church, and he rushes in. He says, where's Ginny? Where's Ginny? Is she here? The person at the church is like, Ginny's here, but you're just a bit too late. And we see Ginny there, her body's motionless, and she's dead. So apparently Ginny has or had a condition, which I'll just like explain it now, even though we learned about it a bit later on in the chapter. But essentially it's called Sapphire Scale, and what it is that any reaction to like natural light, be it like sunlight, moonlight, anything like that, when exposed to natural, like just your skin is exposed, these like sapphires will like start just spreading all over one's body, and it'll like harden over them and like suffocate and kill them. So we see Kuma really cradling Ginny in his arms, like really crying tears of like sadness for like the passing of like literally his wife, basically like his wife, literally, yeah. And swearing to her, swearing that he's gonna take care of Bonnie and like, you know, raise her as his own daughter, even though she technically isn't. Truly, this just furthers the theme that is a long-standing theme in One Piece, which is that, you know, your founding family, that's the kind of like, that's the family that's more important to you, the ones that you find, the ones that you make for yourself, sometimes even more so than your biological one. Also furthering the theme that is just repeatedly seen in One Piece, where your biological father is a piece of shit and your adopted father is an amazing human being. So we see like throughout the years, we see montages of like Bonnie being raised by Kuma, the two of them like living together, right? And all of that is also spliced with Kuma still being an active member of the revolutionaries. You see he's leading platoons, leading groups, and even like we see him training Sabo for a bit. So then a few years later, we see that Bonnie has actually inherited the same sapphire scale disease that her mom had, right? And all the doctors on the island don't actually know what sapphire scale is, but they can at least say that, okay, we know it's not amber-lead syndrome, which if you remember, amber-lead syndrome was mentioned in Law's backstory because that's what took out Law's hometown of Flevens. So as part of like Bonnie growing up and everything like that, you have like some village boys who would like just sometimes make fun of her sapphire scales or whatever, just saying like, oh, you're a monster, da-da-da, all that kind of stuff, right? And Bonnie would be like, oh, you know, they're like making fun of my jewels again, or rather they're making fun of my scales again. And Kuma though would turn it into a good thing, be like, oh, you mean your beautiful jewels? Like, you shouldn't be ashamed of them, you should be like proud of them because they're beautiful. And you know, Kuma, just being an amazing father, he just wants Bonnie to like feel good, right? And that's also genius because it really connects to where like jewelry Bonnie, like we now see where she gets her pirate name from for when she's actually going to become a pirate. Side note that is incredibly important to mention, we learn from this section that it says 7 years ago when Bonnie was 5, which means that Bonnie currently in the current story is 12 years old. Now that's crazy because like obviously the discussion of the past few chapters has been like, how old is Bonnie, like for real? Because, you know, Vegapunk and Jay would always call her like, oh, she's just a brat, she's just a little girl, like, you know, but to them everyone's little because they're old as hell. So we didn't know if it was just like them being like, oh, the youth of today, you know, or like literally referring to Bonnie as a girl. But now we know Bonnie is quite literally 12 years old. And honestly, 12 is an age that makes perfect sense, right? It's an age where she's mature enough to like realize what she's going through, and she had to go through a lot in her life. But at the same time, her maturity age of 12 is like, it just makes so much sense for like, inside she's just like a little scared girl who wants her dad back. So anyways, after Kuma realizes Bonnie has the same condition, we see him tell Ivankov and Dragon that, yo, listen, I have to quit the revolutionaries because taking care of my baby girl is just too important. And honestly, Dragon and Ivankov are like, no, we get it. And honestly, I'm just trying to understand what Dragon gets, because Luffy was definitely born by this time and he doesn't give a damn about Luffy. But yeah, the revolutionaries say, okay, we'll like pour all of our resources, we'll like try and help you find a good doctor, right? So they bring in a really good doctor from somewhere else. The doctor checks a bit on Bonnie, and then Kuma and the doctor go to have a conversation. And the doctor's like, listen, I'm sorry, but the way that the disease is progressing now, she isn't going to live to see her 10th birthday. So Kuma's like processing all this, like, is there really nothing we can do? Little does he know that Bonnie was like eavesdropping, but she didn't hear the whole thing. What she heard was just like something was going to happen to her at age 10, but she doesn't know what. So Kuma, of course, being the kind, like caring father and all that, doesn't want to make his like daughter despair. So he just says, oh no, the doctor, he was just telling me, yeah, by the time that you're the age of 10, the disease will have cured itself. So you only have to suffer for just a bit more, and then when you're 10, it'll all be gone. And wow, what a good dad. So then we get a really cute scene of Kuma asking Bonnie, if you wanted to go on a trip, where would you want to go? And that's interesting of how like it connects to the present day, why Kuma asks that question to others before he like sends them to other places, right? Like how he asked it to Perona before sending her to Mihawk's Island. It's like, where do you want to go on a trip? So then we see Bonnie's answers are, she wants to go to the Sky Islands, and then she wants to go to Fishman Island. And these are interesting to me for two reasons. The first is that both of those locations are places that have heavy ties to Joy Boy, Nika, the Ancient Kingdom, and the Void Century, and the Poneglyphs. So the fact that those two places are being mentioned, like the more fantastical places are being mentioned, is really interesting to me. But on top of that, it's also that those are the places that like Luffy and Roger are like really interested in, right? People of their caliber. Those are the places where during their journeys they express interest in wanting to go there. So then you have the last scene of that chapter, which is where the people come like crying to Kuma, like, Kuma, King Bakori, Bakori who was here 16 years ago, who you defeated with the help of the Revs, yeah, he's back, and he's still trying to cut off the dead weight. So he's literally going around burning people in their homes. And Kuma, you see Kuma's determined face, like, yeah, I'm not gonna let this stand. And that's the end of the chapter. So yeah, this batch of chapters was loaded. Kuma's backstory is already set to be not only the best in One Piece in terms of like hype and just like what we get to see, like amazing character moments and characters that we want to see, but also just emotional and like character development writing wise as well. And then also Oda's ability to just write like really compelling characters, really compelling storylines, even for people we don't know for long. Because honestly, we knew Ginny for all of like 2 or maybe like 2.5 chapters, and yet he can still make us care so much about her death and like feel such somber like sadness at her death, because he wove her story in with Kuma's, who is a character we do care a lot about. He wove it in there so well. And then seeing how Kuma was quite literally bearing everybody else's cross. Get it? Kuma, bear. But he was quite literally bearing everybody else's crosses and sins and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's just Jesus to me. But now we know that even more tragedies incoming in the next 2 chapters, because we know that an event has to happen to where Kuma becomes the king of Sorbet. But then something else happens to where people start thinking of him as a tyrannical king, and before he's eventually kicked out and ends up being a pirate before eventually becoming a warlord of the sea. So here's my thought. What if Sapphire Scale was induced by the celestial scumbags in some way. Because we know for a fact that Ginny did not have that condition before going to be kidnapped by them, right? Because she was clearly in the sun all of her life before that and nothing happened. And so maybe because it was induced by the celestial scumbags, they're the ones who have the cure. So my thought here is that in order for Kuma to like cure Bonnie, or like to get the cure to cure Bonnie, he needs to have made a deal with the world government where they said, okay, we're gonna give you the cure. In exchange, you're gonna A, become a warlord of the sea so that you become directly under our thumb if we need you to be, and B, sign up for Vegapunk's like cyborg experiments because Vegapunk needs somebody to experiment on. And you know Kuma would do both of those things in a heartbeat if it meant saving his daughter's life. Also, speaking of the cure itself, what if it isn't the cure in the like pure medicinal way that we used to think about it, the traditional way, but more so like using a devil fruit? So the reason I thought about this is because in the most recent SBS, which is 107, I believe, it came out just like maybe over a week ago, Oda revealed to us that Bonnie's devil fruit, the name is the Toshi Toshi no Mi, which is the age or year fruit, which is what most people guess because it's pretty obvious. But essentially what we've seen, the way that like Bonnie's applied like applications to using her power, is that she can access alternate like future reality timelines of herself, right? So my thought here is, what if Bonnie is currently using her devil fruit power on herself and accessing a reality where she doesn't have Sapphire Scale? Because we've seen Bonnie on Sabaody, here on Egghead, she's not like suffering from Sapphire Scale at all right now. And if she is using like her powers to maintain that appearance, and it's like a constant drain on her energy, kind of like what Tsunade does with her mitotic regeneration in Naruto, then props to her, because I know that's taking a lot of energy, or devil fruit energy, on her part. So yeah, we got lots of lore about Bonnie and Kuma's story in this like few chapters, and I honestly never thought that Oda would go this dark with the story, but damn. But what did you guys think about the chapters? What do you have to think about Bonnie's situation in the past, how her birth and her current, how that relates to her current situation now, and what are your guesses about like what Kuma had to do in order to like rescue Bonnie or save Bonnie or whatever? Let me know all that beautiful stuff in the comments. So that's the end of the video, y'all. Now please guys, I need y'all to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more One Piece content like this. We got a lot of things coming down the pipeline, and share it around with your friends who love One Piece. Like I said guys, I'm trying to make this a community, but I need your help to do it. But yeah guys, that's it. I'll catch y'all in the next one, and always remember, One Piece, one life.